good day. So today we are going to have the inverse function in our general mathematics. So first, let's know the relation of a function, if it is a function or not. Okay? So again, we are going to recall the function. Pag sinabi nating function, dapat yung ating graph, kapag naggawa tayo ng vertical line, it must be intersect at only one point. Ibig sabihin, we can say that a given is a function kapag meron lang siyang isang value ng x or it is walang katulad yung ating x or the domain. Okay? So we can say again that the function is a function kapag yung ating graph ay nag-intersect only kay one point. Okay? So as you can see in our given graph, meron tayong function at meron tayo yung inverse niya. Okay? Now, we need to identify if the inverse is a function. Okay? With this, the inverse of this graph is, okay, so this is function. Okay? So yung open upward natin na parabola, kasi kapag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, it intersect only at one point. Okay? But yung inverse nito ay eto pong dark na parabola. Open sa right. Okay? So ngayon, yung inverse niya, kapag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, meron tayong 2 points. At kapag may 2 points or nag-intersect siya at 2 or more points, it means it is not a function. Okay? Therefore, the given, if in-inverse natin siya, it is not a function. Okay? So again, ibig sabihin, not all function, ang inverse niya is also a function. Okay? Now, let's have the another graph. So the other graph is this one. Ito po ay ang ating function. Okay? So ito yung graph ng function natin. Kapag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, nag-intersect lang siya at one point. Ibig sabihin, this one is a function. Pero kapag kinuha natin yung inverse niya or yung inverse ng ating first line, eto po yung inverse niya. Okay? At pag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, is mag-i-intersect lang din siya at one point. Ibig sabihin, the inverse of this function is also a function. Okay? So, in short is, not all function, the inverse is also a function. Hindi lahat. Sometimes it is not a function and sometimes it is a function. Okay? Now, let's have this one. Which graph is not a function at bakit? So, first, let's have the letter C. Yung letter C natin, kapag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, nag-intersect lang siya at one point. So, it means it is a function. Letter B natin is, nag-create ulit tayo ng vertical line. Kahit madaming vertical line yan. Kung saan ka mag-create ng vertical line, nag-i-intersect lang siya at one point. Okay? Kaya, this letter B is also a function. Yung letter A natin, kahit saan ka maglagay ng vertical line, yung vertical line mo laging nag-i-intersect at 2 points. So therefore, letter A is not a function. So this is just a recall because we are going to proceed with the inverse function. Okay? Now let's have this one. This given is a function because yung ating x or yung ating domain is, yung domain natin, hindi na ulit. Kasi diba we identify that the domain is not repeated, then it is a function. Since ang ating domain ay 0, negative 2, and 1, walang naulit. This means that this one is a function. Okay? Next example natin. O eto kapag ginrap natin yung ating given dito. Pag ginrap natin, it creates inclined line, straight line. Okay? At pag nag-create tayo ng vertical line, nag-i-intersect lang siya at one point. Ibig sabihin, this is a function. Okay? Next natin. 0, 1, negative 2, and 1, and negative 1, and 0. So, this one is also a function. Bakit siya function? Dahil, kung nakikita natin, walang naulit na domain. 0, negative 2, and negative 1. So, ito yung domain natin. Hindi siya naulit, therefore, it is a function. Okay? Next natin. yung graph natin. Pag ginrap natin yung given natin na ordered pair, kahit may magkaparehang range, the given is, when we have a vertical line, it just intersect at one point only. Nag-intersect lang siya sa one point natin. Therefore, this is a function. Okay? Since now we know already what is function and not function, or we have recall what is function and not function, now, let's have this one. Another example. So, this example is not a function. Bakit? Kasi naulit si domain natin. Ano-ano ba yung domain natin? 5, 5, 2, and 2. So, these are the domain. Naulit yung 5 natin at naulit yung 2. Kaya, this is not a function. Bakit po? Kapag ginrap naman natin to, eto yung kalalabasan niya. Ayan. It opens on the right. So, kapag nag-create ng vertical line, nag-i-intersect siya at 2 points. So, ibig sabihin, this example is not a function. Okay? Ngayon, na-recall na natin yung function and not function. Now, let's proceed with this one. Ngayon, pupunta na tayo sa inverse function. Kung sa function natin is, yung domain lang yung tinitignan natin. Okay? Ngayon, sa inverse naman, si range din dapat nating i-monitor. Kapag si range ay naulit or may naulit sa range ninyo, ibig sabihin, yung inverse ninyo ng function is not a function. Okay? For example, let's have this one. Let's have the example ng ordered pair. So, let's say we have 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, and 3, 4. Okay? So, let's say this is your ordered pair. This one is a function. Okay? Bakit siya function? Kasi, yung domain natin is 0, 1, 2, and 3. Walang naulit. Okay? Ngayon, para ma-inverse natin siya, pagpapalitin lang natin yung x and y natin. O, let's start with this. Yung inverse niya is 1, 0. Next is 2 and 1. Next natin is 2 and 2. Pinagpalit natin. Next is 4 and 3. Ngayon, yung inverse niya ay ayan. Now, we need to identify if the inverse is also a function. Okay? Now, titignan ulit natin yung first set, which is 1, 2, 2, and 4. May naulit ba? Meron po. Ano yung naulit? Yung 2. So, ibig sabihin, pag may naulit, yung inverse niya is not a function. Okay? So, therefore, the inverse f of negative 1 of x. Kapag inverse, meron na tayong exponent na negative 1. Pag hindi pa siya inverse, it is f of x. Okay? So, the inverse is not a function dahil may naulit tayo kay domain or the first set. Okay? Now, let me give you this one. Paano natin kukuhanin si inverse function? Okay? So, meron tayong step. So, iisa-isahin natin yan later on. Now, let's have this one example. Sa example natin. Now, we have here the p or function p. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin is to identify if this is a function. So, 2, 3, 3, 6, 4, 8, 5, 8. So, these are the ordered pair. Yung domain natin is 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is a function. Bakit siya function? Dahil yung domain natin ay hindi na ulit. Kaya siya function. Ngayon, pag kinuha natin yung inverse nitong given natin, ano yung inverse niya? Ito, 3, 2, 6, 3, 8, 4, and 10, 5. Now, pag na-inverse na natin, get the domain, the new domain. Ano yung new domain? 3, 6, 8, and 10. Identify, may naulit ba? Kapag walang naulit, therefore, the inverse is a function. Kaya siya, inverse function. Okay? This is the inverse function. Kasi function yung inverse niya. Therefore, it is inverse function. Okay? Again, kapag walang naulit, Madali lang naman identify yun eh. Kahit hindi nyo siya pagbaliktarin, tignan nyo lang si y. Kapag may naulit kay range, ibig sabihin the inverse is not a function. Pero kung wala, ibig sabihin the inverse is a function. Okay? Kapag ordered pair, madali lang ma-identify if the inverse is a function. Pero paano kapag function rule na ang meron kayo? Let's have this one. Paano pag ganyan na yung inyong given? Paano nyo malalaman if yung inverse niya is a function? Now, the given must be in the inverse form. Kailangan muna natin siyang gawing inverse. Then, we will check if the inverse is a function. Okay? Now, let's have this one. Bago tayo mag-start, yung f of x natin, ang inverse niya is f raised to negative 1 of x. Okay? Yan yung inverse niya. So, kaya kapag nakuha natin yung inverse, eto na yung magiging symbol natin. Okay? Next, now let's solve this one. First thing you need to do is to copy the given. So, here is your given. Okay? Next is interchange. Oh, hindi pala muna interchange. Ang gagawin natin is change the f of x kay y. Okay? So, kasi 'di ba ang f of x natin is considered as y. Okay, the function rule. So, ibig sabihin, change muna natin siya. y is equal to 4x minus 3. Okay? So, next natin dito, next step is to interchange the x and y. Pagpapalitin lang natin si x at saka si y. So, si y magiging x is equal kay 4, si x magiging y minus 3. Ngayon, na-interchange, na pagpalit na natin si x and y. Now, let's solve for y. Ngayon, kailangan matanggal natin yung kasama ni y, which is yung negative 3. Paano natin siya matatanggal? Transpose negative 3 magiging x plus 3 is equal to 4y. Okay? Ngayon, paano naman natin masosolve si y? Divide both side by 4 and then cancel. Y is equal kay x plus 3 all over 4. Pwede nyo nang pagbaliktarin, magiging y is equal to x plus 3 all over 4 na siya. After nyo makuha ngayon si y, which is x plus 3 all over 4, palitan nyo ngayon si y ng inverse rule. Ano nga ulit yung inverse ni f of x? Magiging f, since kinuha nyo si inverse, f raised to negative 1 of x is equal kay x plus 3 all over 4. So now, this is your inverse. Inverse ng function ninyo na 4x minus 3. Ngayon, paano natin malalaman kung tama itong inverse natin? Okay? Meron tayong two ways. First is to get the inverse of the inverse. Itong inverse natin, i-inverse ulit natin. Okay? Second method is to get the function or the composition of function. Kaya, dapat alam natin ulit yung operation on function. Kasi di ba meron tayong addition ng function, subtraction ng function, multiplication and division ng function, and yung last one natin is the composition of function, which we create another function. Okay? Now, let's try this one. Check natin kung tama itong inverse function natin na x plus 3 all over 4. Okay? Let's have this one. Let's verify. So, yung verifying natin is checking. Okay? Check natin if the f of x and f raised to negative 1 of x are inverses of function. Okay? Now, let's have the inverse of a function. Write nyo muna dito yung original nyo, yung function. F of x is equal to 4x minus 3. And yung inverse ninyo na nakuha, f raised to negative 1 of x is equal to x plus 3. So, x plus 3 all over 4. Kakailanganin nyo yan later on. Okay? Sa inverse of inverse or inverse of an inverse natin, ang kukunin ninyo is yung inverse na ninyo. F raised to negative 1 of x is equal to x plus 3 all over 4. Okay? Ang gagawin nyo dito is to inverse this one. Okay? Kapag in-inverse nyo ito, dapat babalik siya sa original natin. Ano ba yung original natin? Etong 4x minus 3. Kapag hindi bumalik yan dyan, ibig sabihin hindi tama si inverse ninyo. Pero pag bumalik dyan ang inyong inverse, ibig sabihin tama yung inyong inverse. Okay? Tama itong x plus 3 all over 4 ninyo. Now, paano natin gagawin yan? Katulad lang din yung ginawa natin kanina. Change the f raised to negative 1 of x ng y. Y is equal kay x plus 3 all over 4. Next natin, interchange, pagpapalitin ulit natin, interchange the x and y, yung same process lang natin. So, magiging x is equal to y plus 3 all over 4. Okay, na-interchange na natin. Next process natin, yung process natin ng intercept, which is cross multiplication. Cross multiply natin. Let's cross multiply. X times 4 is equal to 4x. Automatic, ito kay denominator 1. So, 1 times y plus 3 is equal kay y plus 3 pa din. Okay? Next is, paano nyo makukuha si y? Transpose positive 3 to the other side. So, magiging 4x minus 3 is equal kay y. Pwede nyong pagbaliktarin. Magiging y is equal to 4x minus 3. Then, palitan si y ng function. Since in-inverse na natin si negative 1, o inverse, magiging f of x na siya. Is equal kay 4x minus 3. Bumalik ba tayo sa original natin? Yes po. Kung nakikita nyo, ito yung ating f of x kanina. So, ibig sabihin, kung bumalik tayo dun sa original, ibig sabihin, tama ito. Okay? Yan yung paggamit ng inverse of an inverse. Yung in-inverse mo na, i-inverse mo pa ulit. Okay? Now, let's have the second verifying method. Okay? So, kailangan alam nyo itong pareho. So, it is a function of a function or it is a composition of function. Okay? So, paano siya? O, di ba dito nagke-create tayo ng function rule. So, for example, f of x is a function of g of x. Paano ba natin kinukuha to? Magiging f of g of x. Okay? O, di ba ganito yung ginawa natin last time? So, ngayon, we will have this composition of function. Paano po yung composition of function? It can be f. So, pwede siyang f of x is the composition of f raised to negative 1 of x. So, magiging f of x is a composition of f raised to negative 1 of x. Pwede rin naman na baliktad. F raised to negative 1 of x or the inverse function or the inverse is a composition of f of x. Okay? So, papakita ko sa inyo kahit ano dyan, equal pa din yung sagot ninyo. Okay? Now, let's have this one. Paano ito? So, magiging f of f raised to negative 1 of x. Tapos, yung kabila naman is f of negative 1 of f of x. Okay? So, first muna dito tayo. Ang una nating isa-substitute is yung ating nasa loob. So, f of negative 1 o f of raised of negative 1 of x. Okay? So, magiging f is x plus 3 all over 4. So, ngayon, eto na yung value ng x ninyo kay f of x. Okay? So, paano natin siya isosolve? What is your f of x? 4x minus 3. Substitute the x. 4, ano yung x natin? X plus 3 all over 4, parenthesis. Lagi nating ilalagay sa parenthesis yung sinasubstitute. Minus 3. Okay? Then simplify. Simplify natin. Since this one, pareha yung ating whole number and the denominator, we can simplify. What is our answer? X plus 3 minus 3. And simplify natin. X plus 3 minus 3. So, 3 plus 3 is 0. So, cancel na natin. So, the remaining is x. If your f of x, or if your f of x plus 3 all over 4 is equal kay x, therefore, tama yung sagot ninyo. Again, hindi pwedeng negative x, hindi pwedeng may coefficient, hindi pwedeng may exponent. Dapat magiging x lang siya. Okay? So, kapag ganyan ang naging sagot nyo, ibig sabihin that is correct. Okay? So, you can write this one as, pwede itong maging f of raised to negative 1 of x is equal kay x. Okay? So, this is correct. Now, paano naman kapag f of raised of negative 1 of f of x? Dapat same din yung maging sagot kasi dapat equal lang sila. Kailangan x din yung makukuha natin dito. Now, let's substitute the f of x. So, magiging f raised to negative 1 of 4x minus 3. Okay? Tapos, eto na ngayon yung magiging value ninyo kay f of negative 1. So, ano po iyon? Yung x plus 3 all over 4. So, x plus 3 all over 4. Isa-substitute nyo yung value ng x kay x. So, magiging, ano yung x natin? 4x minus 3. 4x minus 3. Then, plus 3 natin all over 4. Simplify. Simplify natin. Let's simplify this one. So, the answer is 4x minus 3 plus 3. Since minus 3 plus 3 is cancel, ang natira is 4x all over 4. And simplify natin, 4x over 4 is x. So, therefore, f of negative 1 of f of x is equal kay x. Since x din yung sagot niya, equal siya dito sa una nating method, then it is correct. Okay? Again, yung ating inverse of an inverse, dapat mapupunta siya dun sa original function natin. Kapag composition of function, dapat your answer will be x. Hindi pwedeng negative, kailangan positive x. Okay? So now, this is the verifying if f of x and f of negative 1 of x are inverses of function. Ibig sabihin, these are function. Okay? Now, let's have another example. So, for our example is this one. Meron naman tayong, it is a rational function. Kasi ito, it is a, anong tawag dito? Ano lang ito? Function lang to. So, ngayon, let's have the rational function. Same process tayo. Kunin muna natin si inverse ni function. So, we have y is equal kay 5x minus 7 all over 3. Palitan muna natin si f of x ng y. Then, interchange the x and y. So, x is equal to 5y minus 7 all over 3. Next natin dito is para ma-eliminate natin si denominator is to cross multiply. Okay? Cross multiply. Hindi katulad nung kanina natin nag-transpose agad tayo. Pero kapag may denominator, cross multiply. Okay? So, x times 3 is 3x is equal kay 1 times 5y minus 7 is equal to 5y minus 7. Okay? Now, para makuha natin si y, ay, anong gagawin natin? Transpose negative 7. So, magiging 3x is plus 7 kasi negative, transpose, magiging positive, is equal kay 5y. Paano natin makukuha si y? Divide both side by 5. Then, cancel. Y, pwede nyo nang pagbaliktarin. Y is equal kay 3x plus 7 all over 5. And, palitan si y ng inverse. So, magiging f raised to negative 1 of x kasi inverse na natin siya. 3x minus 7 all over 5. So, now this is the inverse of our function. But we are not yet sure if this inverse is a function. Paano natin malalaman kung function siya? By verifying it. Let's verify it by inverse of an inverse. So, ang gagawin nyo is, yung inverse ninyo, f raised to negative 1 of x is equal kay 3x minus 7 all over 5. Dapat ay, sorry, it is positive 7 pala. Plus 7, dapat magiging ganito ulit. 5x minus 7 all over 3. Okay, now let's start. Palitan si inverse ng y. Y is equal kay 3x plus 7 all over 5. Next, interchange. Magiging x si y is equal kay 3y plus 7 all over 5. Na-interchange na natin. Next, cross multiply. So, x times 5 is 5x. Then, all over 1 ito. So, magiging 1 times 3y plus 7 is 3y plus 7. Now, para makuha si y, i-separate muna yung kasama which is positive 7. So, magiging 5x minus 7 transpose is equal kay 3y. Paano natin makukuha si y? Divide both side by 3. Then, cancellation. So, y is equal kay 5x minus 7 all over 3. Then, palitan si y ng inverse niya. Ano ba yung inverse ni f of f raised to negative 1 of x? Siya ay si f of x. Okay? Is equal kay 5x minus 7 all over 3. So, kung nakita nating same siya sa original natin, it means it is a function. The inverse is also a function. Okay? Next natin, to verify, para we make sure talaga, we will be having a function of a function or the composition of function. Okay? Composition of function. Now, paano natin makukuha? So, pwedeng yung, kung alin sa dalawa, pwedeng f of f raised to negative 1 of x tayo. Okay? Now, substitute natin si f raised to, or the inverse. Ano ba yung inverse natin? Ito po yung inverse natin. Itong may negative 1. So, magiging f of 3x plus 7 all over 5. And siya yung magiging value ni x nyo kay f of x. What is your f of x? F of x nyo ay 5x minus 7. 5x minus 7 tayo. Okay, so let me erase it first. 5x minus 7 all over 3. Ngayon, papalitan nyo lang si x ng value ng x niya. Ano ba yung value ng x niya? Etong 3x minus 7 over 5. Okay? So, let's substitute. 5 times natin kay 3x plus 7 all over 5 minus 7 natin all over 3. Okay? Simplify. Since yung 5 natin sa labas is common niya si denominator 5, we can cancel this one. Anong natira? 3x plus 7, then minus natin kay 7 all over 3. Simplify. 3x plus 7 minus 7, 7 minus 7 is 0. So, magiging 3x all over 3. And 3x all over 3 is equal kay x kasi we can cancel this one. So, ang natira natin is x. Therefore, it is correct. Yung inverse natin is correct. And it is the inverse of a function. Okay? So, ganyan lang po yung pagsosolve natin ng inverse function and how are we going to verify using the inverse of an inverse and function of a function or the composition of function. Okay? Now, let me have this one. Kasi nag-solve tayo. Now, let's have this one. Ito yung sinabi ko kanina sa inyo. The f of negative 1 sa f of x natin is pwede natin gamitin. Pwede rin siyang magkabaliktad. Where x for all x in the domain of x and x for all of x in the domain of negative f of negative 1. Okay? Now, Let's have this one, the inverting function. Pag sinabi natin inverting function, yung inverse of a function natin, if the function f is the set of ordered pairs in x and y, kapag function si x and y, yung ordered pairs natin, then the inverse of f is set of ordered pairs ng y and x, pinagbaliktad. Kapag walang naulit doon, ibig sabihin, it is a function. But, the inverse may not always be a function. Kasi, pwedeng maulit yung y ninyo. Kapag may naulit sa y, the inverse is not a function. Okay? Kapag inverse function naman, the inverse of a function is also a function. At yun yung tinatawag nating inverse function. Again, kapag in-inverse natin yung function, at kapag naging function yung sagot, tawag natin doon inverse function na. Okay? Pero kapag inverse of a function, in-inverse lang natin yung function. Kinuha lang natin yung inverse ng function. Pero, yung inverse niya, sometimes hindi siya function. Okay? Now, let's have this one. Not all inverse of a function is also a function. Ano lang yung nagiging function ni inverse kapag one-to-one relation. Okay? Kasi diba kung naaalala ninyo, yung relation natin merong one to many, many to one, at one to one. One to one. Okay? Yung one to one natin, kapag yung inverse niya is also a function. Okay? The inverse is a function, so that's why it is inverse function. Okay? Kapag many to one, this is a function, pero yung inverse niya is not a function. Okay? Pag one to many, it is not a function, pero yung inverse niya is a function. Okay? Now, let's have this one. Okay? This is, let's say, this is your f of x. F of x, and we will get the f raised to negative 1 of x. Kukunin natin yung inverse niya. Now, let's have first, or let's identify if this is a function. 2, yung domain niya, 2, negative 2, negative 1, 1, and 2. So, walang naulit sa domain niya. So, this is a function. Okay? Ngayon, tignan natin if this function, na-identify na natin to na function, if this function is, yung inverse niya ay function din. Inverse natin. So, yung x and y natin, pagpapalitin natin. So, yung y natin magiging x ngayon. So, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ano yung y natin? Ito na ngayon yung magiging y natin. Negative 2, negative 1, 1, and 2. So, kung titignan natin yung bagong set of domain natin, walang naulit. So, ibig sabihin, this is the inverse function. Kasi function yung naging inverse niya. Okay? Now, let's have the second example. So, let's have this f of x and the inverse of our f of x. Now, let's identify if this is a function. So, walang naulit sa ating domain, kaya ito ay function. Okay? Function ito. Ngayon, let's have the inverse of this one. So, x and y natin. Yung x natin, etong nasa y natin. 1, 4, 3, and 1. Okay? This one, yung y naman natin is yung nasa x natin. Negative 4, negative 1, 1, and 4. Is this a function? Hindi. Kasi, nung in-inverse natin, may naulit. Kapag may naulit, now we call this as inverse. Inverse siya. Inverse of a function. Bakit? In-inverse natin yung function. Inverse siya ngayon nitong function natin. Okay? But we can say that this one is not a function. Yung inverse natin is not a function. Okay? Again, kapag hindi function si inverse, we call it inverse of a function. Pero kapag inverse function, ibig sabihin yung inverse niya is a function. Okay? So now this is what the inverse function and the inverse of a function. Yun yung difference niya. Okay? So now, this is the lesson about the inverse function or the inverse of a function. So thank you for listening for our lesson or our topic this.